Good morning, members, and welcome to the meeting of the Social Work Services Committee. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available on the public website for viewing. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidelines, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you're in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including any votes that will be undertaken by roll call. If anybody needs to leave the meeting, please leave the Teams meeting for that period or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track as to whether or not the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly, taking their time and speaking directly into the microphone when making contributions. When referring to reports, please provide the reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everybody to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Item 1. Redundant apologies and Chair's approval. Claire, could you please provide the redundant indicating who is participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. We've got currently 19 members present, 2 currently not present, being Councillors Ingalls and Scobie. We have 9 members here in the hall, 10 on Teams. The 10 on Teams are Councillors Karen Callers, Councillor Davis, Howie, Jameson, Jordan, Little, McFarlane, Walters, Wood and Young. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Item 2. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No. That's great, thank you. So item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting, 22nd of August 24. This minute is for noting. Are members happy to note the minute?
Happy to note.
Thank you. Item 4, Adult Services and Housing Options and Homelessness Services Service Plan 24-25. This report offers a comprehensive outline of the service plan for adult services and housing options and homelessness services. The report indicates where we are on track and any areas that require more intensive input. Rebecca Aldridge and Avril Dickey are available to answer any questions. Has any member got any questions? Councillor Jordan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I just wanted to clarify some points I didn't understand from the report, but thank you very much, officers, for the report. I just wanted to ask a question about page 22 in the report. There's reference to a few bits that perhaps you could just explain to me, please. So there's reference to payments to other bodies, transfer payments, client contributions and internal recharge income. Please could you explain what those are? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Can I go to Rebecca for that, please? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Councillor Jordan. At this stage, what we're doing is we're looking to pull a report together that will detail all of that information, and we'd be happy to bring it back at that stage.
That sounds okay. Are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. It's very interesting, quite ambitious. Got a couple of questions. On page, sorry, I just lost my page for a second. On page 23, we have an average age range and length of service. And we also have fixed term employments there. Firstly, in relation to the age, do we have succession planning and what is it and how we're going to implement that? And in relation to the fixed post, there's a very, very small number, only 18. Can you explain to me what those are, just for information? And lastly, on page 35, under the failure to be sustainable, it talks about developing a new children and families commissioning strategy. And as this is the adult services one, I'm just wondering if that's a typo, or if not, if you could explain it to me, help me understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McFarlane. Can I ask you for that, please, Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor McFarlane. In terms of the succession planning, absolutely, we absolutely understand the challenges that we have in terms of recruitment, for example, and we understand that the demographics of our working population. So we have things like, as you'll be aware, our in-house social work training, for example, of which I am a one of. So this is a Grow Your Own scheme that we've been part of for many, many years, and it's very successful. In terms of posts that are really challenging to fill, so your mental health team would be a prime example of that. We have our in-house Grow Your Own mental health officer scheme that we are engaged in and have been for quite some time. We're also looking at opportunities that that we can sort of develop pathways into different career choices, so for care coordinators, for social care workers, etc. We're heavily involved in bringing those things in. I myself, along with other colleagues, are very keen in terms of succession planning and always have developed opportunities for people who are coming through to give them we ask people to act up into roles as opposed to acting down in their roles. So yeah, it is at the heart of everything we do. The fixed term post, yeah, they're short-term projects mainly. So those posts are there for that purpose. And we obviously, the projects will come to an end, and at which point the first-term contracts tend to come to an end. The kind of development of the plan for children and families, I think that probably is a typo on our place, so apologies for that. We'll get that sorted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Yeah, we'll make sure that's sorted. I'd like to ask Stephen Morgan to come in, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies. The development of a framework for Commission for Children and Families is actually deliberate because we were thinking about transitions. All children become adults, and particularly for the most complex needs. So it's trying to smooth some of that transition work in terms of our commissioning for children to ensure that, you know, we hand over the best possible information, etc., and services into adulthood. So we did toy whether or not we kept that in this one or not, but we felt on balance the importance of transitions meant the commissioning strategy should be referenced in both this and the children's plan as well.
Thank you, Stephen. I think that's helpful. I think we have Councillor Little next on the list. Thank you.
Chair, can I just come back on one quick point, please?
Yes, thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for that, Stephen. That's helpful. I'm just wondering about the fixed term posts. We have those 18, and listening to what Rebecca said about them being short term work and whatever. But as we know, there's a shortage of suitably trained people. Are these people that we could potentially offer employment to? Thanks.
I'll go back to Rebecca for that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. I think if we have people in fixed term posts and you know the opportunities become available to them for them to move into permanent posts, and then we facilitate that where we can and welcome that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Councillor Little, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. It's very comprehensive and it made for actually really good reading, and it's not very often you see that about council reports. Just a couple of questions. Page 23, our people, our posts. We've got 799 posts and 795 people. Do we have vacancies there, and how are we addressing that? And also, the average length of service, 9 years. Our largest amount of employees, 386, is in the 0 to 5 years of service. Would this be a lot of new intakes, or the Grow Your Own, as you were discussing earlier, Rebecca?
Thank you, Councillor Little. That's a good question. Over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. What we do have is we do have vacancies, and as described in terms of our succession planning and trying to get the specialist posts coming on stream, we are working with that. And in terms of, apologies, what was the second question?
come back in, Councillor Little?
Yeah, the 0 to 5 years of services are a large amount of employees at 386. I was just wondering if we'd had a large influx of intakes, or this was actually the Grow Your Own, a very successful part of the Grow Your Own.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both, but I think, yeah, we absolutely are really proud of our Grow Your Own schemes, and we do have a lot of people, a lot of students that come in successfully on the back of that. It does present its own challenges in terms of having such a high volume of new workers that are coming on stream, and we are working hard in terms of our induction, our supervision, etc., to ensure that those people coming on stream have the skills that we require for them to move on in terms of that succession planning as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. And it's encouraging to hear that we're keeping young people in there and encourage them into such work, because it's hugely important at the moment. Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was to ask on page 22, the income. It's probably just a typing error, or my arithmetic's not particularly good, but if you look at the government grants at 1% and you look at the fees and charges at 3%, if you multiply the government grants by 3, it doesn't come to 912,000. It actually comes to 1,996,000. Can you give me clarification on that as to whether if there's an error or there's something I'm missing in it? And the other thing I was wondering if you could possibly expand on other grants at nearly 14 million, if you're able to disclose the source of these other grants.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Rebecca, are you okay to answer that? Thanks.
I can answer it, but don't answer it at the same time, so apologies for that. I think we probably would require our finance officer to come in and give the detail to that. Now, we can either do that, actually, we can provide that information and get it out to members if that's acceptable. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's correct. We'll do that, Councillor Wood, if that's okay with you. So I will make sure through the team that a report comes back on those figures, if that's okay.
We'll do a briefing. And
we'll do a briefing on it if members would like that.
Yeah, that would be very helpful, please. And would, on the other point of the other grants, are they able to disclose the source or the various sources?
I'll go over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Again, we would need to include that in the briefing that we're going to provide in the future, if that's acceptable. Thank you.
I feel as chair.
Thank you once again.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. I feel as chair that's acceptable, so we'll take that up after this meeting. Thank you so much. Councillor Walters, please.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to ask a quick question about page 33. A bit of an echo there. The local government benchmarking framework. They're all TBC. Is this because we're waiting on central government to pass them on to us, or is this an issue somewhere else? Thanks.
Sorry, Councillor Walters, we're having a wee bit of difficulty hearing you. Do you think you could try and represent, and can everyone make sure their mics are off, please? If you could just repeat the question. Thank you.
Yeah, it was just to do with page 33, the local government benchmarking framework, as to whether we're waiting for something or whether we're going to have to produce something or whatever. Thanks.
Yes, it's a good question. Over to Avril, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that if that's all right. If that's all right, Chair. We're waiting on the information in terms of the local benchmarking framework, and we will have that detail ready for the December committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we've got quite a lot of figures coming back to the December meeting, members, so we'll look forward to receiving those and the work involved behind the scenes on that one. Thank you. And that Stephen would just like to come in, please. Thanks.
Yeah, members will note in all of the plans before you today, there's quite a few of the data sets that are to be confirmed, and that's because the timing of developing our service plans and also the data information where you had the FEST report at the last committee overlapped. So we want to make sure that how we access our data, the accuracy of that data is absolutely right before we put the figures into our service plan, so we know that we've got what we absolutely need. So Rebecca's made reference to December. You'll have the next iteration of the full data report and performance report then, and we'll be able to update this at a similar time. So we can either bring an update back on the service plans in relation to the missing data, if I call it that, in December, or we can incorporate it into the next update, whatever members would prefer.
Thank you for that, Stephen. Councillor Little, you still have your hand up. Are you waiting to speak? Or if you are, can I bring you in after Councillor Jordan, please? Thank you.
Apologies, that's legacy.
That's okay. Councillor Jordan first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me back in. I also wanted to ask a question regarding page 30. There's a table, adult housing options and homelessness service success measures 24-25. And in it, there's some information about the number of successful interventions on tenancy evictions. And then it's got a target of 100 monthly. And I just wondered if you could elaborate on that at all. It may be that this is something you also need to come back with, but just what work does that involve? How is it measured? Are we achieving that target? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Rebecca, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. I can tell you that we are achieving that target, but the detail in terms of the work that goes into it, I'd probably need to come back on that if that's okay, if that's acceptable.
Thank you. Councillor Dorbert, did you want to come in? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll try and get my phone to work so I can put my hand up on that as opposed to in here. Just a question that was asked by Councillor Jordan initially in terms of the stats and breakdown. Can we have timescales for that report coming back, please? You said a report would come back. It's in terms of, sorry to remind you, the page 22 in terms of client contributions, supplies, services, admin costs, payments to other bodies. And you said that would come, but a timescale for that would be useful, and a detailed breakdown would be useful as well. I'm sure you will do that anyway, but sorry for the additional work. It just would be useful to see that. And my actual question concerns page 25, strategic outcome 19, which is carry forward, implement the housing options and homeless strategy 2023-28, which will provide assistance to those at threat of homelessness. I get that this is a transfer of responsibility from one committee to another, but we're a year behind already in terms of the strategy, and given where we are in terms of homelessness as an emergency across the regions, a crisis across Scotland, that's really not great where we are. And also to move on to page 28, if I can find it, just bear with me a minute. Page 28 goes on to, and this is probably going from implementation to delivery, which is good, housing options and homelessness, delivery on housing options and homeless strategy 2023-28, which is good as well. But a question for the administration and for social work. Given that the SNP government has cut funding from the affordable housing budget by 200 million this year, and Jamie Little is forecasting a 20% cut in the D&G budget year on year for the next 3 years, how does the Chair and or social work think the strategy is achievable? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorbert. It is very challenging times, and as you say, the budget is continually being cut. I think the teams have been working really hard on what is a digital strategy to help bring things forward. So if I can go over to yourself, I think that's probably one of the routes, or yourself, Stephen, you might get more feedback on that, Councillor Dorbert, because we're working with the teams on it, and it's a very good point. Thanks.
Yep, thanks for the question, Councillor Dorward. In relation to the delay in developing the strategy, that is largely due to the transfer from one previous department to another, and us absolutely getting the work right. And in the intervening period, we've also had the national emergency and crisis announced, as well as the local one. So we are working with other colleagues across the housing sector, as well as the homelessness and housing options teams, to look at the plan that will be coming back to full council in December, I believe. So that will also influence the homeless strategy as we go forward. And we do believe that it's the right thing to delay the homelessness strategy to take account of the wider homeless and housing issues that that strategy will address. In relation to the fiscal position in Scotland, I think it's impacting across all public services, not just around affordable housing, and we will have to rethink and reprioritise what we do and how we do it. What I can say, though, is just this morning, myself and some colleagues were in a meeting with James Little, looking at affordable housing and some of the developments locally, particularly in the northwest Dumfries, and we're confident that they are going ahead as they currently are. We're highlighting some specific accommodation for young homeless people in particular, where we can put elements of support in there, and also specifically for care leavers. Now, planning applications due before the end of this calendar year for that, so we're content that that project itself will go ahead, but obviously further projects around regeneration will have to be reassessed and re-evaluated given the position that we're in. It's too early to say what the impacts are likely to be, but we will closely monitor those and feed them in through this committee, but also through the anti-poverty subcommittee as well in relation to some of the overlap. So hopefully that answers some of the points. And in relation to timescale on the other one, we'll get a briefing sent to members before the end of this month, so that doesn't have to wait for another committee around the financial position. That's okay.
Thank you very much for that. I'll come back in a minute, Councillor Dorward. I just wanted to say, put it on record, that I really commend the work that the team have done with Jamie Little and his team. I know they've been having constant meetings. Also, Stephen Morgan and the team have been having lots of meetings with the housing suppliers, and I'm not going to call them social housing suppliers because we're trying to move away from that word at the moment, in my mind anyway. And also I'd like to thank the teams for the hard work they've done working in collaboration with a lot of the bed and breakfast suppliers for the emergency situations over the last year. That has been really good collaborative working and has helped us out in a lot of difficult situations, so thank you for that. But yeah, thank you, Councillor Dorward. Your next question, please, and then I will move on to the next. Councillors are waiting. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me come back. It's not a question, it's a comment, and thank you for the response. I think, and I totally agree with what you're saying about the teams. The teams are working really hard in really challenging situations to make things happen. Out of our team, my colleagues just said, Councillor Wilson responded really quickly to a query she had. So it's not about what staff are doing, it's about the financial constraints on what we as a council and what you as an administration can do. And I think the other thing that's interesting, and it might sound a bit petty, but I'm just going to say it, is the restructuring process has actually delayed moving a strategic plan forward, which is challenging as well. If we hadn't restructured, the housing services plan might have been in place already. And we actually are in a crisis and an emergency, so it's just something that I think we should note. And get your social housing, RSLs, again, are constrained by what they can do because of the financing. The financing isn't available. I think that's the biggest challenge we face. And I think one of the things we should be doing here as a committee and cross-party is looking at how we can alleviate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I take those points on board, Councillor Dorward, and we have seen a lot of work being done with the two latest housing developments that have come ahead, and I think we'll hear a lot of good news in December, so we'll take it from there. Thank you. Councillor Jameson, please.
Thank you, and if there's any background noise, I apologise. I'm going back to just a clarification on the local government benchmarking framework. I have a copy of that, and it's particularly interesting on education. Now, it may be that some of the information is not there, but I do have a copy of the local government benchmarking framework. As I say, it may not have all the benchmarking that's listed here, but there is one out at the moment, and we should be aware of that. Because my contention is, as councillors, we have to have as much information as we can, and the benchmarking is a really good guide. It's not definitive, but it gives you a good guide of where we are in comparison to other councils. So it may be, Stephen, that all the information is not there, but there's certainly a current local government benchmarking that covers social care.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jameson. I think we can agree with that. Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jameson. Yeah, the local government benchmarking framework has been published after this went to press, but my point earlier was more around our own targets in terms of how we set those, and that's critical in relation to the other work that we're doing around our performance and where we need to concentrate. So we will absolutely present the current local benchmarking framework data, and we'll also have a better understanding of what we think our targets need to be by the time we come back in December. So we'll provide that information then.
Thank you.
If I could just
Steve.
come back in, Chair, just for a second.
Okay, go ahead. Can you speak
yeah, I'm
up,
not
please,
questioning-
Councillor Jameson? We're
Sorry.
finding it quite hard to
Sorry.
hear you. Thank you.
Sorry. I'm not questioning that, but I do have to query that because the local benchmarking papers that I've had them for more than weeks, probably months. So I don't know when your paper was written, but I know this particularly because I've raised issues on education, but the social care stuff's there as well. And I've had that for weeks, if not months.
Stephen, are you able to come back in?
Yeah, it's just the frequency and having the most up-to-date information. The local government benchmarking framework is often in arrears, and we're trying to wait for the most up-to-date data. Also, some of it has different reporting timeframes in terms of annual, quarterly, etc. So we'll ensure that we've got the information in the next iteration of the report.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, Councillor Jameson. And Councillor Wood, you still have your hand up? Is that a legacy hand?
No, it's a fresh hand, if you don't mind. It's,
Not at all. Come in.
Another question. And as others have said, the team are clearly doing a cracking job. I do like reading this report. It's good. But I would like some further information on page 39, insufficient resources for settlement and asylum seekers programme by both governments. How much are we being shortchanged? Can you actually put a figure on that? I think the time has come to actually be upfront and expose just how much we're getting squeezed.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Yes, there's costly negotiations taking place, but I'll go over to Stephen on that one. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this is a risk that we've highlighted in case we get insufficient resources for resettlement and asylum seeking programmes. Currently, we actually do receive various different sums from the Scottish Government, Westminster, via the Home Office. And it quite often depends on the route that an asylum seeker comes into the country, whether it's through one of the national schemes, if it's a spontaneous arrival, etc. So the money that we get does actually cover our costs. We are aware, however, that there is discussions within the Home Office at the moment about what the future looks like. So this risk's highlighted in case there's a decrease in the funding available to us as we move forward. What I can say, though, is our initial analysis of the income that we get to meet the needs of these people and the actual work that we do does match. But as we referenced in the previous committee, you may recall, quite often the money that we get is in arrears, and we do the actual protection work and the support work for people using our existing staff, and therefore we're not always able to target this money in the way we would like, so it sits in our budget line to address the savings. So Charles Rocks, in his role, is looking at that in detail, and I would suggest come December we'd be in a position to bring a more detailed paper back, Charles, or possibly February, in relation to what the landscape looks like. Because I think this is a topic that elected members have been interested in for quite some time, so I think it will be helpful for us to bring a detailed paper in February. Charles, do you want to add some to that?
Yeah, happy to bring a paper back trying to provide the relevant oversight on resettlement and asylum. Projections going into 2025 and possibly 2026 is highlighting there will be a descaling of resettlement on a national level, both from Scottish Government and from Home Office. So we do expect the resources and funds to decrease over that. What is the uncertainty is around asylum and refugee supports that we require to provide, where there is increased levels of vulnerability that ordinarily would sit within the housing and homelessness routes and through social work services. And right now there's real uncertainties around that, in addition to the Home Office's commitments to the hotel statuses within Dumfries and Galloway. So we are in constant dialogue with MEARS and Home Office on that, trying to get some level of assurances or certainty what that will look like. So we're doing a bit of a scope around this and evaluation, and we'll bring that back in February. We'll hopefully provide clarity. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Charles. And I would also like to put it on record, thank you for the email that you sent to elected members and the work that you're doing with MEARS, because I know you're in constant communication with them about the current situation with asylum seekers and refugees, so thank you. So I think we can now go to the recommendations, everybody. Are members happy to agree the Adult Services and Housing Options and Homelessness Service Plan for 24-25 as set out in paragraphs 4.3 to 4.7 and included in the appendix? Okay, thank you, everybody. So we go on to item number 5, Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Service Plan 24-25. This report presents the service plan which provides the performance framework for delivering the outcomes which are within the remit of Social Work Services, Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Services. The plan details the specific actions from the Council Delivery Plan 24-25. Noting key activities and change and improvement activities that the service will deliver during 24-25. The revised risk assessment forms part of the service plan. Detailed reports on progress will be presented to this committee on a 6-monthly basis. Charles Rocks and Avril Dickey are available to answer any questions. Thank you. Councillor Darwood first, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I suppose the obvious is the pie charts and a detailed breakdown would be useful again in some of the information, but that's a subsidiary question. My main question is about on page 51, mentions resettlement programme. Delivery Action Plan, Strategic Outcome 2, our work, next phase, support the Dumfries and Galway resettlement programme, including Syrian, Afghan and Ukrainian arrivals and asylum seeker dispersal. Councillor Wood's already spoken about funding on that, so I won't mention that. And also on page 54, we have resettlement, support those entering Scotland and the UK through the resettlement schemes to resettle and integrate into our local communities, which is laudable and hopefully achievable. And one of the things we've spoken about at other various committees is that we need people to come into this region to work and settle and contribute to our economy, because we are suffering badly from depopulation at the moment. So we should be welcoming people in. But can I ask what we are doing, which is quite concerning, how we are working as a council, it's not perhaps for social work, perhaps for a full council, but something to raise here and take on board across the council, is how we are working with others to combat the increase in racism and anti-immigration sentiment across the region, which is appalling, some of the things we're seeing on social media about people that are coming to live in this region. Do we think, and we think certainly in our group, we need to play a larger part in that as a council. We can't resolve it ourselves, but we need to play a larger part in that. And I'll use an example that we haven't done, that I brought forward a motion last year, in June last year, about the Windrush generation. To just heighten the example of folk that are coming over here, that came over here in the 50s and helped our health service get back on its feet, our transport systems get back on their feet. And I asked that the flag was raised in June every year to commemorate that, and it hasn't been done. It hasn't been followed up, hasn't been done. It wasn't raised in this year, in June 2024. Now, this isn't a criticism of anybody here. It's just saying that it hasn't been done. It was agreed to, the council agreed to do it, full council, and they haven't done it. So we need to play a part in actually looking at how we tackle racism and anti-immigration sentiment, and that's one way of doing it that isn't that expensive. It's just raising a flag and putting a press release out, and we didn't do it. So I think we need to follow up on that, I would suggest. And also, there are things like Black History Month this month, and the council has got a big fat nothing about it. Nothing at all. Our anti-poverty stuff is fantastic, we're doing that, but nothing about Black History Month. And I appreciate that probably in the demographics of this region that we've got a minority of individuals who are black, but we've got a significant minority of individuals who are black and brown coming into this region, and we need to do more to recognise that and actually combat anti-racism and anti-immigration sentiments that are quite rife at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darwood. I'm listening to what you're saying as Chair of Social Work, and I think it's something that would need to go through full council. I will acknowledge that 2 groups met on a march or a walk recently, and it went extremely well. We do deal with a lot of, I would call it antisocial behaviour and keyboard warriors online, that we have to be take concise of that. But at the end of the day, if you wish things to be raised and taken forward in full council, then please send an email. I think you're quite justified in doing that. So, but I'll go over to Stephen. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward. I'll pass on to Charles in a minute in relation to data about what support we offer, particularly in terms of resettlement, because that's important. I will personally look at the action around Windrush and make sure that that's updated and followed up. Can I just clarify, was that June 24 or June 23? 23, thanks. Okay, I'll look at that. Also, what I would say as a social work profession, we're really proud of our social work values, and one of the key values that we hold dear is anti-racist practice. And if I'm being honest, Councillor Dorward, nationally, we haven't been as active as we as a profession need to be. This was acknowledged at our national conference of Social Work Scotland just, I think it was last week, it might have been the week before now, and also through the Scottish Association of Social Work. So there's some excellent presentations there, and what we're going to do as a team is look at how we, using our social work values, can really look at the calendar ahead, and on behalf of the council and with other partners, look at how we can be really proactive in terms of anti-racist behaviours and practices as we move forward. Like you said, though, we've missed out in terms of what's happening right now, but it's absolutely on our agenda to take forward as an action plan. And like I said, it's a core value, and I am very precious about our core values. But I'll hand over to Charles in relation to some of the specific actions around resettlement and other areas of asylum.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward. Yeah, so I'm the chair of the resettlement board, which sits under the community partnership. It's got multi-agency representation around the room. We have different work streams that sit within that, both looking at early help and support, health links, and lifelong learning, in addition to our comm support around this. So where that's mostly focused around resettlement, we naturally will gravitate into areas around asylum and immigration and refugee supports, given some of the crossovers and opportunities we've got. What I would advise to reassure you, there is a really good positive value lens that's applied in that. We appreciate there are communications out there through social media and other areas of community communications that we have to monitor and support. There are discussions that are taking place with the Mayors and Home Office trying to reinforce about their responsibilities and about positive messages around this, and there are other avenues we've looked to try and explore through council comms and elsewhere to try and reinforce positive messages around our new guests and support. So actually, for the resettlement perspective, we have been identified through CAUSE and government as a good practice area about resettlement in terms of the supports put in place. There are real challenges around the system's pressures to actually do the right thing at the right time. When it comes to our asylum supports, this is a bit of more of an uncertain, unpredictable area in terms of the numbers that we're operating within, but there's a real commitment from the community staff on the ground to support some really complex need at different stages. So the work streams will continue. The Resettlement Board are looking at the planning getting into next year, and hopefully we'll be able to review an evaluation of that in terms of our successes so far that we can give scope moving forward.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think that gives us a bit more detail, and I would like to congratulate the teams on the ground for the work they've done with the Resettlement Board and trying to help people integrate into our communities, because it is extremely important nowadays to be as open-minded as possible. Councillor Little, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and again, thank you for this report. It's an ambitious plan. Just a couple of quick questions. On page 9 of the plan, introducing a dedicated kinship care team to better support and help children remain within their families. Is this a new initiative? I thought we already had this in place, as kinship care isn't new. So surely we had something in place to support these families. And also the phrase ordinary houses. What exactly does that mean? I mean, do we have these in place? Is this within the foster care system? Is it about living with family? Just a little bit of clarity on that, please, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Little. Can I pass that over to Charles, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Little. Yeah, so just in respect to the kinship support team, this was through a gap analysis and identification of support that was required to be met, particularly around the review that a lot of families in kinship scenarios that were at risk of breakdown, given some of the pressures of carers caring for family members where there was trauma, adversity and other needs there. So this was part of the mitigation funding that was scoped out to explore additional resource for children and families that would create a new team. I'm in a very blessed position to advise members that we now have recruited within that team. That team is now live and are now supporting and wrapping around some of the most vulnerable children and carers where it does come under that sort of kinship area of support. In respect to the the definition of ordinary houses, this is just part of an ambition that set out around the promise in the independent care review about the nature of residential care and supports that we try to align as close as possible our children to live where it is residential care to a house or a home that closely resembles community living. And that's just in reflection of the journey that residential care establishments have been over the years, from the historical, traditional at times institutional units, as they once referred to now houses and homes, and to try and kind of close that gap as close as possible. So that's part of the reimagining work that we're looking to try and achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think it's very important that the work we're going to see coming forward will actually see a huge difference in what we are looking at with regards to children's homes, and I think that's very important for children's mental health, especially under the pressure that these children are experiencing. So thank you for that. So I don't think we've got any more questions, so we can now go to the recommendations. Are members happy to agree the Children and Families Justice and Resettlement Service Plan for 24-25 as set out in paragraphs 4.3 to 4.7 and included as the appendix? Thank you, everyone. So item 6, social work brings us nicely into social work services, residential children's houses or homes. This report has been prepared to present an update on progressing activity in relation to the growth in demand and complexity of needs experienced by families, and notes the work progressing in relation to presenting a business case to provide a new model of delivery for residential children's homes, and for agreement that a fiscal business case will be presented at this committee in February 2025. So a lot of research has gone into this, and Charles Rocks is available to answer any questions. Thank you. I think we have Councillor Young first on the list, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm concerned with various aspects of the high costs here. As a wee bit of background, can I say, in my 20s, I worked in a children's unit for youngsters between 6 and 16. It was a special built unit for about 20 residents, and it was in Goulburn Hospital in Edinburgh in the 70s. Obviously, this was funded by the NHS at that time, and it was well funded. Staff worked 12-hour days, 3.5 days a week. You were given responsibility for 1 or 2 of the residents. And if you'll indulge me a little, Chair, one of the children I was given special responsibility for was a young boy, about 8, who came in with absolutely no social skills, and he was self-abusive to such a state that he was through to the bone in his knuckles and his chin. So he was put into a catsuit to restrict his movement, and he was monitored 24 hours a day, basically. He was mute, but eventually, one dark winter's day, he said to me, "Look, John, it's snowing," when I wasn't paying much attention. And that's the first words that boy was heard to speak. So I do have some experience of residential children's homes, and I know the situation is complex. The youngsters will present with many complex conditions, whether it might be extreme autism or behavioural problems. And we were fortunate in that unit because we had a resident psychiatrist, and all the youngsters were on behavioural modification, so they could earn rewards if they reached certain targets, such as, there was no Xboxes in these days, it was things like a trampoline or a walk in the woods, or even a game of football outside. But going back to the paper, £7.8 million for 28 residents, I think. 7.962 million for 28 residents. That's about £300,000 a week, or sorry, it's at £5,500 per week, about £300,000 per child per annum. And that is money that is going out of this region to probably private providers of care, of residential care in central Scotland. And I know there was a concern in some residential placements in England recently about the high profits being generated by child placements in with private providers. And to be honest, I don't understand. I mean, it's come up year after year since I've been a councillor. I really don't understand why we don't attempt or even do a proper cost-benefit analysis of having our own residential unit here in Dumfries and Galloway. And I know that we should be mimicking what was said earlier as ordinary homes rather than a unit, but I just wish some progress was made in looking after our own, where they can still keep in touch with the loved ones who care for them and they're still kept in the region. And I know there's also the problem of obtaining suitably qualified staff, particularly in social worker. But as the film says, if you build it, they will come. And I really think we should be doing a proper cost-benefit analysis for the February meeting to see if it is possible. Obviously, 7.9 million is a horrific amount of money. I mean, think of that. That's almost a Dumfries High School every 4 years, isn't it? Obviously, if we had our own unit, it would still cost probably a couple of £1 million a year, but it would be a considerable saving. And that money will stay in Dumfries and Galloway, and our children from this region would be looked after by people living in the region rather than just sending our problem elsewhere. As well as a cost-benefit analysis, could we have a possible breakdown of what specialist needs these 28 people who go and receive residential care out with the region? Could we have that also for the February meeting, the special needs of why these people are going out with their region? Anyway, thank you for indulging me. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. I'd just like to commend you for the work that you've done in the past with young people. It's really good to hear, and thank you for that. I think that's the reason for this report. In 2.2, you'll see that we're going to see a case presented at the committee for new ways of working, and I know that Charles and his team have been working really, really hard behind the scenes to offer a new model, and it'll be a new costing analysis and benefit, but I'll let him come in and provide you the detail on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Young. Yeah, just to highlight this history of this paper dates back to the February committee, where there was a discussion and debate that took place around the cost-benefit analysis at that time in terms of the investment we were providing, but also from an ethical, moral sense. We were placing our children out with region, and I know this has come up periodically at different committees around the sort of scrutiny around that cost. To reassure you, there will be a cost-benefit analysis on that paper. The intention of this paper is to lay out the options that we are exploring just now in partnership with some other providers, including Housing Association, of what that cost analysis would be, and to be able to provide with members the best detail and best information possible in order for that full holistic evaluation to take place through committee in February. That this is not without its challenges, and to try and get this information, but also to progress with partners a sort of commitment to try and visualise this or imagine it in terms of how that would look like within Dumfries and Galloway. We very much know that for the 28 children that are out with placement just now, I would love to sit here and provide members with a reassurance. This is always based on an assessment of need around specialist requirements or levels of vulnerability need. At times this is due to the fact that we do not have a capacity resource issue within Dumfries and Galloway. That means that we have to scope through our statutory responsibilities and professional judgment a care for children out with region. In regards to the 28 children, that there are themes around needs that we'd be happy to highlight and profile, but to do a full breakdown of 28 children's needs, I'm not sure it would be the best use of resource to be able to do that through a full audit in terms of our capacity to be able to do that. But they highlight the themes and experiences the children go through in their journeys around trauma and adversity that highlights the need for us to actually need to identify care in the first place. There will be some children that we have based on assessment and through the role of our RPG, we have identified that we can only meet the care of that child out with region through to a matching process. So hopefully that helps Councillor Young give a position in that. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles. And I think we all very much look forward to the report with the new ideas that we're going to see coming forward. So I hope that answers your question. In the meantime, Councillor Young. Councillor Dorward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, which is really positive and ambitious and refreshing. And thank you, Councillor Young, for sharing your previous experience. I like the Chair's comments, which does have a bearing on where we are now. I too have worked with young people who have experienced multiple trauma, and this is partly why I raised this issue in February this year. So the Labour Group have actually raised the issue. We're actually very pleased that it's come back with such a positive report, and welcome the fact that we're looking to resettle or to try and resettle when the report comes back the majority of our young people in residential care in the region, if we can find a model that supports it and if we can find a model that's financially sustainable. Just looking at the figures, which Councillor Wood also mentioned, we're actually spending an additional £3.5 million on residential care. And as Councillor Wood already mentioned, and as we have mentioned at every single social work report committee since February, this is going to private sector because there are no residential care homes that are run there's one in Dumfries, but the rest are private sector. And we put our children and young people to private sector care homes across Scotland, which are run by the private sector for the benefit of shareholders mainly, and the benefit and from a profit-making perspective. So incurring a £3.5 million overspend year on year is not sustainable from service reserves. We can't do it. But we need to, as well as looking at the finances, look at the welfare of our children and young people who are our most vulnerable citizens and who we need to keep in the region, because we are exporting our most vulnerable resource, take that back, rewind, we're exporting our most precious resource a lot of the time. Our children and young people are leaving, young people are leaving the region at a really high rate. We need to keep them here, so we need to look after our young people and treasure them and make sure that we do the right thing by them. So absolutely welcome this, think it's great, well done in all the work that you've done, exploring various options with our local authorities. The Fife option sounds really interesting and refreshing. I know you've done some work there. Would it be possible, and this is a question for the Chair, and it's not a difficult one, honestly, would it be possible to have a visit to see some of these? Because if we are making the decision in February, and I'm not saying this is going to be the option that we go for, there are lots of other things to look at, but given that it's been mentioned in the report, it would be really useful to have a visit just to see what the model looks like. There are other models available, I get that, so I'm not saying we're favouring that, it just would be useful to see what that looks like, if that's possible, for some members of the Social Work Committee who want to do that. That would be an interesting journey, wouldn't it? But it would be really, I think that would be a useful thing. So absolutely commend and welcome the report for its ambition and its bravery in terms of how we may be taking services forward for our young people, a residential service for young people forward in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Dorward. I'll pass that over to Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Dorward, and thanks for raising the issue back in February. And again, I'd like to congratulate Charles and the team to where we've got to. The visit is a difficult one in many respects because it's children's homes and they live there and they belong to them. I think what Charles could certainly do is speak to some of the providers and ask them to speak to some of the children and young people who live there to see if that's possible. But we've always been really, really cautious around even how we visit our own home in Hardthorne Road, that we're not encroaching on the space of the young people who live there. So we'll certainly reach out, and if we can't do a specific visit, we could maybe get a presentation by some of the young people if they're willing to do that, whatever suits. So Charles, if you could take that away. Would that be okay? And anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I've actually got a meeting this week, Councillor Roberts, so I will mention it with him at that stage. What we need to be careful through this sort of arrangement is we're benchmarking and just profiling something that's worked really successful in Fife, and just learning from an organisation, really open that there are other organisations out there that might offer something similar. But what we've seen so far we like, and I think that's just from what children are telling us who've experienced the journey there. So I'll have that conversation on Thursday, and I'll come back to you on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Charles. We'll look forward to that. Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Doherty.
Chair, for allowing me to come back. I totally respect the fact that we don't want to intrude on somebody's home. It might be useful to talk to the staff. It might be useful to talk to other elected members who in Fife Council who have authorised this and who know how it works. Just to get an idea, if we're making a decision potentially in February on how it works. I'm not saying that's the favoured option by any means, as I've said already, but it might just be useful to have a greater insight from our perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Doherty. I think we'll definitely take that on board. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, we could maybe get some photos of what the actual buildings look like as well, so that we have a full perspective of what we're looking at, and that could be done in the presentation, like Stephen said.
Yes, thank you. Good points. Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's 4.5. Can you expand on the chart below where it's talking about the 5 options? Because it's talking about being done through procurement. Normally when you go back out into the market and try and renew contracts, you actually find an increase. Can you clarify or give us a better indication of what you're looking to achieve through these? Well, it's really 3 options, because you're talking in number 4 about the combination of 1, 2 and 3. Is there any possibility of getting a clarification on that?
Thanks, Councillor Wood. Charles, are you okay to answer? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through each option, try and give additional context. So option 1 is promote increased efficiency with area within a housing care and property management group. So for an example, that would be through our housing provider to look at some of the capital projects that are going to be kind of envisioned over the next year, 2 years, and look to see if we can get into a potential rental agreement with a sort of bespoke house and home there that we could then provide the care staff and support for our children within the community. Option 2 is promote increased efficiency within the area through procurement of new arrangements for care while utilising Dumfries and Galloway Council property. That's part of our review of our estates and buildings to look at an opportunity whether or not we can go into a sort of long-term agreement arrangement with a potential provider, which would provide cost savings over a longer period of time in terms of a longer commitment. Third option is, again, the example that we had referenced just there around the Fife project, and that is looking at a longer term partnership with a third sector organisation that they would effectively operate the house and home on behalf of Dumfries and Galloway, but over a longer cycle where we would have a clear oversight in terms of the aims and objectives and the framework that the house and home would operate in. Option 4 is a combination and variation of the different options that we would be looking to do. And option 5 is the status quo, which is the current provision we currently have, which we've already identified will present short to medium risks and vulnerabilities around costing. Thank you.
Is that helpful, Councillor Wood?
Yes and no, insofar as how soon would they be in a position to disclose the outcomes from these conversations within 1, 2 and 3?
I'll come back into Charles. I don't know if that's the case actually, but I'll let you in, Charles.
We're working with partners just now, Councillor Wood, effectively trying to imagine and design what that would look like to get a sense of what the cost would be. I'm incredibly cautious about committing to any arrangement with any external organisation around what that model would look like. That would need to go through due diligence around any arrangements in terms of our potential procurement around that model. But clearly we would be given scope and steer from these organisations and how we would design that. So our intention is to come back with the model and the different varying models with what we are projecting would be the cost analysis of each support. Thereafter, that would be for the February committee to scrutinise, debate, discuss, explore what would be a potential preferred option within that we would then, as a service, progress forward, but appreciating that there are other caveats within the arrangements within council before we would be able to take forward and implement. Thank you.
I think that's helpful. Thank you very much, Charles. Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. All these conversations go back to, we seem to be terrible into third parties here, providers and that. Is it maybe not time we grasp the nettle and did more ourselves to maybe build units that the council actually run, so we don't have to continually go outside and ask providers, can you help us? What can you do? And it means possibly the cost at the end of the day could be brought down, because the providers have basically in a lot of cases got the council over a barrel in some ways because of costs. They just say the price, and the council yourself, you're stuck with a situation where sometimes you have to pay that money to try and resolve the problem. So is it maybe time into the future that we look at building our own, as to say, and even so with our own houses as well? Might be something for the future, something for the committee to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Yes, take your points on board. We already do have a property, but I'll pass you over to Charles. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Slater. Option 2 will scope that out, but I need to be mindful about the capital programme and the challenges within the projection around programmes moving forward and how that would envision. But we'll certainly scope that within option 2. I completely agree with having that oversight. What I would say is that the Fife programme that we've highlighted does actually demonstrate and show that actually through a sort of arrangement with a third sector organisation, there are real successes and really good outcomes that can be achieved through really close scrutiny and partnership working. Through our current commissioning that we do on an individual basis with a child, we're not in any close contractual provision over a longer period of time that we can then work, develop and foster these working relationships around expectations. So at times we are at a bit of a mercy of the private providers effectively having more of a sort of influence in terms of the culture and experiences our children have than we would want. We would want to have more influence that we would want about their overall practice and culture. Thanks.
Yes, just say, Chair, yes, I believe that we should be doing that, definitely. It would also bring our costs down and make decisions a little bit easier as well, instead of having to keep going out and source places for children to go. We would have that commitment to ourselves and do that. But, you know, instead of continue to have to go to providers, because in these meetings it's always providers. So it's maybe time at the council you're right enough to look at something brand new. You've sometimes got to think outside the box.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. And I think Charles alluded to that in point 2 in 4.5, so that will be taken on board in the report. We'll come back. Thank you so much. So we can now go to the recommendations. Members are asked to 2.1, note the work progressing in relation to presenting a business case to provide a new model of delivery for residential children's house with a view for more children to live in ordinary houses. Reduced residential placement costs and fewer children and young people in care will be placed out of authority as outlined in section 4. And 2.2, agree that a final business case will be presented at this committee in February 25 to set out options for a new model of delivery for residential children's houses as detailed in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.7. So item 7, housing options and homeless service update. This report provides an update on service performance for the Housing Options and Homeless Service, the pressures within the service and the ongoing on-year budget pressures. In addition, members are asked to approve the annual Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan, referred to as RRTP, monitoring report to the Scottish Government for financial year 23-24. Rebecca Aldridge is available to answer any questions. Thank you, members. And we have Councillor Dashburn, please.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning. Thank you for the report. I'm looking at page 78, 2.1 and 2.2, as part of our targeted action or improvement measures to recruit a project officer to help with our internal review processes. However, I see that this action was cancelled, it says, because we were unable to recruit to the post. I'm just wondering, what is the fallout from that if we can't deliver this action point, and what impact is that going to have on our service in terms of improving it? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dashbury. Thank you. If I could go over to yourself, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that question. We are actually looking at that again, and we're in the process of identifying somebody that can carry that forward. The implications, we understand, are significant, and that's why we're looking to redress that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Little, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report again. It's just a daft little question. On page 70, the current figures up until the end of August. I was just wondering if these have been recorded from the beginning of the calendar year or the beginning of the financial year, just so that we can get a real understanding of how these figures are escalating and what kind of speed.
Thanks, Councillor Little. Rebecca, please.
Yeah, I can confirm that these are recorded from the start of the financial year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jordan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'm just referring to page 70 as well, and just sort of observing that at the bottom of the table, the increased number of unsuitable accommodation order breaches, that it looks like that hasn't been recorded previously, but has been recorded this year. And there is explanation in the report about the use of bed and breakfasts being used. I just wondered if there was any further information around that or any comment that you'd like to make on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jordan. Rebecca, are you able to come in on that and the work that sometimes happens with some of the housing groups as well? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Jordan. I would say that the increase in number of suitable accommodation orders, that's something that's just come into place, because that really depicts the level of crisis that we're seeing in terms of the use of bed and breakfast accommodation for temporary accommodation. So that's a new figure, and one that's increasing rapidly. We are doing a great deal of work in terms of working with private bed and breakfast. We have 196 temporary accommodations. 97 of those are with Wheatley Home South. So the ones that are out with that, we've been working with bed and breakfast providers to ensure that we're getting best value for those, because the cost for those were actually quite significant. So we're doing a great deal of work around that. We're also in discussions with providers or registered social landlords, to look at other options, and we're doing this with Jamie Little as well in terms of what we could utilise going forward for temporary accommodation. Thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Councillor McFarlane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks, Rebecca. Looking at page 75, 1.3, it says that the action will be difficult to move forward due to resource issues with partner organisations. I'm assuming that Wheatley Homes are the partners there, but I do have other questions. But just for clarity, that would be helpful. On page 79 at 2.4, we've carried forward that one. And I would like some reassurance that we're still going to do it, because it's saying that it's carried forward to year 2. And then the 2.5, it says that the review of out of hours accommodation is complete. So I'm wondering if there's an outcome for that. And then on page 82, again, we've got 4.1 where it says it was complete, and that's in the development of processes for tenancy. So again, just looking for what does that mean? And lastly, you'll be glad to hear on page 106, where it's the housing RTTP, Dumfries and Galway is not on track for making the planned transition into rapid rehousing. I'm wondering what plans we have in place for that, what impact it has on us, and when might we expect to be on track? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. That's quite a lot of questions. I'm just going to give Rebecca a few minutes, if that's okay, because she'll maybe need to write them all down and give her a minute, if that's okay. Because I think there's about 6 questions there. So, Rebecca,
Thank you, Chair.
ready.
That's really helpful. Yeah, I may have to come back in terms of some of the questions, but certainly what I can, with my able assistant beside me here, Avril, will try our very best. So the first question is that, yeah, that it is Wheatley Homes South. Excuse me, South. Excuse me while I just discuss with Avril what the second question was. Thank you.
Yeah, page 79, 2.4, it's carried forward. Why? What reassurances do we have that it will be completed?
Yeah, I'll probably need to come back to you in terms of the details on that one. I am aware that that review has been carried out in terms of our accommodation, and obviously that links in with the detail that I provided earlier around about temporary accommodation, the work that's been done to develop further accommodation to get best value for that. In terms of the Abitas update, that is, we've had some concerns. We've had quite a few issues with the Abitas providers in terms of that update, but we're working alongside them to conclude that. We will be doing a piece of work going forward to establish whether that is the best value for what we need, because at the minute there are elements in terms of our reporting that we're not currently receiving through that system. So we need to understand moving forward, particularly around about providing enhanced data for elected members, whether that system is the right, appropriate one. Excuse me a minute while we look at the next one.
No, thanks for that. The next one was 3.4 on page 82. It's development of plans for young people's temporary accommodation, saying it's a priority, but it's been carried forward. So just wondering why, if it's a priority, we're having to carry it forward. Thanks.
I can confirm that the review of hours of accommodation, we can provide that, so we'll get that in terms of a briefing. The work round about the accommodation, I know that Stephen made comment earlier in terms of the work that we're doing with the registered social landlords to look at developing the most appropriate use, the most appropriate accommodation, I beg your pardon, for young people, and that will include homeless young people and young people coming through our care for system as well.
Yeah, thank you. And last one was on page 106. D&G is not on track to make the planned transition to RRTP. So just wondering why not, what impact it has on us, what plans we have to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. We aren't on track. Obviously, the funding round about the RTTP is coming to an end. So we're needing to work we're currently providing details in terms of actually what the money has been used for and what we would like to use further funding going forward. So we're looking at providing that to Scottish Government as we speak, because what we do know is that the current crisis has it's the bed and breakfast, temporary accommodation, particularly but use of bed and breakfast, that's really drained funds and has prevented some of the work that we would want to have done round about the RTTP. But we are looking, I mean, the focus for ourselves now is round about prevention, because we've said this many times, we can't allocate our way out of the current crisis. So we are looking at developing further. We have a small prevention team currently within the Homeless Service. We're looking to develop that. liaising with colleagues, Nicole Hamlet in the Health and Social Care Partnership to get some resource from themselves to look at the delayed discharges and how we can minimise or mitigate those in terms of homelessness. So there is quite a lot of work that we still need to do, but in terms of the actual, we're not on track for some of it, but we're very much on track in terms of developing the ideas and information around about what we need going forward. I hope that's helpful. Thank you.
No, thanks for that, Rebecca.
Thanks, Councillor McFarlane. Thanks, Rebecca. I know there's been work going on with the Tackling Poverty's team in the third sector as well, and work on the delayed discharges, so thank you for that. Councillor McFarlane, please.
No, I've just spoken, thank you.
Pardon me. I need to put my specs on again. Councillor Dorward, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for another fantastic report, full of really useful information. We've already rehearsed the arguments and challenges behind the lack of affordable housing crisis in the region, across Scotland, financial restraints. So I'll not go into that, but it does present our extremely hard-working staff with an additional layer of challenges. And from this perspective, I would want to know, or my colleagues and I in the Labour Group want to know, where is the synergy and connectivity between social work services, housing options and homeless service with the recently formed Tackling Poverty and Inequalities. I have to read this out, it's a huge title. Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee, i.e. how do they plan to work together to alleviate these massive challenges in our region and avoid what I would call double dunting, as in doing the same work twice when resources are really scarce. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Doherty. I just alluded to that myself and the work that's being done, but I'll let Stephen elaborate on that. Thank you.
Thanks for the question, and I won't attempt to repeat the title of the new subcommittee, of which I am the proper officer. And I think that shows we recognise the links between the work that social work, homeless, housing options, etc. do in relation to the whole scheme of kind of improving, those who live on the edge of society, those who live in poverty, etc. A lot of the children and the families that we work with in particular live in poverty, so the linkages and the synergies are obviously there. There's going to be a lot of things that come to the new subcommittee that touch on all council committees, and we've got to be really sure that we don't duplicate effort. But we might have to double report sometimes in terms of what we report here and also what we report there. And we may well report issues at the subcommittee before they come here, depending on how we cook that particular cake, if I use that analogy. So we are aware of that, and I'm confident that, this new department, as we are, having homeless and housing options, really puts us on the front foot in terms of better understanding the needs, the holistic needs, so not just the social work and the social care needs, but the homeless needs as well. And I think that will feed into the whole agenda of the subcommittee well. However, there will be teething problems as we move forward. There will be issues to deal with, and we'll deal with them efficiently and effectively, hopefully.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Slater, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a question for Rebecca. You mentioned 196 temporary properties. Are these all based in our region, in Dumfries and Galloway? The other thing I just go back to again is bed and breakfast prices are going up. Obviously, it's causing problems with funding and that. So I go back again to looking back to the home side, what we do ourselves, maybe into the future, building properties that we could totally control rather than the third-party situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Rebecca, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Slater. Yes is the answer to your first question in terms of the temporary accommodation. And as already noted, we obviously are trying to work with our current registered social landlords to develop better accommodation and better options for particularly around about homeless, etc. We're very stringent in terms of the legislation around about that. We absolutely need to be, and that's in terms of the current crisis. We are looking at actually what we can do, what we can't do. Now we don't have, as you know, any housing stock. Whether we look at that into the future is something that is probably not for answering for today. It's for a later discussion, because I think the action plan that comes from, that Jamie and ourselves are developing around about the current housing crisis may inform some of that. It certainly will inform some of the work that we need to do locally in terms of developing particular accommodation for particular needs. Thank you. I hope that's helpful.
Could I come back, Chair?
Yes, you may. Thanks.
It's regarding bed and breakfast. Obviously, do you have a set price that you will pay them, or do they basically say this is what we charge here and this is what we charge here? It just to give an idea, or do you have a price you can ask them to do and they will do that price? Thank you.
Thank you. We are looking at economies of scale in terms of actually working with B&B providers that have a number of bed and breakfast accommodations to get best value. They're working with us on that. So I think that's the team have worked really hard with proprietors to ensure that we're getting good value, and we have been able to reduce the cost by doing like a 6-month contract with them as opposed to an ad hoc contract with them. So we continue to work with them to ensure best value, and obviously to ensure that they're happy with how things are developing as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And last question from Councillor Davis, please.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a quick question to ask. I know at some point that there was a caravan sites getting used for temporary accommodation. Is that still the case at the moment?
Thank you. That's a good question.
Thank you. That is our least desirable option, I would say, but we do have quite high quality accommodation in terms of, I mean, caravan probably doesn't do it justice. That they are mobile homes that we utilise. We utilise them absolutely when it's absolutely necessary. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. So we'll now go to the recommendations. Are members happy to 2.1 agree the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan monitoring return to the Scottish Government as detailed in paragraph 4.12 and Appendix 3? 2.2 note the high level of homelessness presentations as detailed in paragraph 4.3 to 4.4. 2.3 note the housing regulator's assessment of Dumfries and Galloway's position in meeting its statutory duty as detailed in paragraphs 4.5 to 4.6, and finally 2.4, note the significant impact on temporary accommodation, the continued use of bed and breakfast accommodation and associated high level of breaches of unsuitable accommodation order 2020 and the actions being taken to mitigate the associated business pressures. Thank you, members. So item 8 is the Public Protection Committee meeting of the 18th of June 2024, which is for noting, but I'd like to acknowledge in that the video launch presented by Julie Chisholm of Women's Aid on domestic abuse and its knock-on effect, both for women and men in our communities. And that video was extremely impactful, and we'll hopefully see that being passed down to the tertiary groups. Item 9, any other business? I have no other business. Thank you very much to all of you for your participation today and for all the hard work. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.